this series on the world as phantom and as matrix, a collection of reflections from Gunther Anders. And today we're into section 3 of chapter 1 of that series, which itself was part of a far more extensive work, as I mentioned last time. Though I stumbled over the German and I said I was going to get that right, so let me get that out of the way. Just some housekeeping with reference to acknowledgments. The German work is entitled Die Antiquierheit des Menschen, Volume 1. It's a 2-volume work. This is from the first volume of it. It was published, I believe, in 1956. Now, weirdly, the translation with which I'm working, which is probably the most widely circulated translation in English, actually comes from a Spanish translation of that German text, wherein it is entitled Abstinencia del Hombre. That translation was done by Josep Perez, and the English translation is actually in turn of sections 2 through 7 of part 1. That's the sections which are entitled collectively "World as Phantom and as Matrix," and they were published as an article in Dissent magazine in 1956, volume 3, number 1, winter 1956 issue, by Norbert Gutermann. He was the translator. All right, there's that stuff. All right, no, that's not the most exciting, but I got that out of the way. Let's get into the meat of the issue, which is section 3, where Anders becomes somewhat more concrete in the treatment of the themes which are being raised. He, as we have noted, has been criticizing broadcast media as a phenomenon which is feeding into the construction of a sort of mass subjectivity. That's not a term I used last time. Last time I used the term mass man. That's the term used, mass man. Mass subjectivity, wherein broad, homogeneous, manipulable aggregate can then be subordinated to the logic of production. Ambient passivity is cultivated. So in section 3, he begins to offer a more concrete exposition as to how this happens, vis-a-vis a consideration of the landscape of the physical home itself and the implication of a shift there. He notes, historically, that the home would be characterized as having a center rooted in a table, a dining room table, a living room table, an anchor around which the family would gather and be compelled, if for nothing else, but by the sheer dint of spatial arrangement, to actually engage with each other and become involved in the process of weaving family life. There's a centripetal character, a center-seeking, grounding character to the family table that is then conspicuously inverted with the emergence of the television and the movement of the television to the center of the home with regard to focus. And some might suggest that this ironically could have a preservative effect on domestic life because there is the shared experience of the television. But Anders and I would be inclined to quickly repudiate this rather brave face in virtue of that what's actually happening is that the only commonality which is presented is the commonality of an avenue of escape. And the consequence is actually not centripetal, but centrifugal. Because, in fact, every individual comes to encounter whatever is emerging from the screen on their own terms. And the proximity of the family members is accidental to that encounter. The emphasis is on this sort of insular mode of consumption. The other thing which transpires, and it is the occasion of a really keen sentence, is which I will just go ahead and from which I will go ahead and read momentarily. The other thing which is going on here, Anders contends, is that there is actually an active, not just a passive or accidental, but there's an active dissolution of the family and the viability of family existence, familial existence. In fact, I would say it goes even further than that, or that we can read the word family in rather large terms here, not just the biological or the immediate family, but one sense of kinship with people all together, humanity all together. Though humanity might itself, as a word, as a concept, be a little abstract here. But what, he then, the sentence, which I found striking, was that upon noting that this was the state of affairs, Anders advances, and in fact does dissolve the family, quote, since what dominates the home, thanks to the television, is the broadcast of the outside world, real or fictional. And it dominates the home in so unlimited a manner that it renders, that it invalidates or renders phantasmagorical the reality of the home, not only of the four walls and the furniture, but of the shared life of the family itself. It renders, it invalidates, and renders phantasmagorical the shared life of the family itself. Because the television shows you, oh, look, what is going on in the world at large. And it takes whatever it is that it presents is going on in the world at large and foregrounds it in your awareness in a fashion which then causes your sense of the immediate home to recede and become almost seemingly illusory. And so then there is a sort of toggling that occurs in terms of what is the phantom and what is the real. An ambiguity arises. And the investigation and the role of this ambiguity will be something upon which Anders begins to elaborate in subsequent sections and chapters, and will be much of what we now are discussing in this series, right? But this is likely sufficient for us here just to reflect upon the contrast between what's going on when the table is at the center of attention and people are seated around each other and have to see and engage and interact with each other in a way that is inexorably together. Even if conflict and problem is part of that engagement, it has an organic reality which cannot be gainsaid. Contrast this and with what occurs when the television is placed at the center of the domicile, of the home, of that locus of gathering, and you see the displacement of relational engagement conversation, game, conflict, what have you, by the escape to the projection of the television. And also the content of that television's broadcast. Again, renders, and they use this wonderful word, phantasmagorical, actual domestic life. It seems so unreal compared to what is being portrayed on that screen. And so then, like, what is real? Is the reality what's going on right here in the living room, or is it what's going out there in the world at large? And there's a tension there, which then has kind of a cascade of consequences for us, which connects back to how our subjectivity is transmogrified. Perhaps even I would use a stronger, darker word. Our subjectivity is mutilated by persistent abiding in the space of this spectacle. I personally found this contrast between the family table as centripetal and the television as centrifugal quite potent, quite fertile, quite suggestive. And I would ask you to sort of think about it in the same way. Again, he's just talking about television and radio. Again, this is mid 20th century. I think it's incredibly prescient because now we have an even more dramatic situation with the domination of these phones. The irony does not escape me that I'm recording this on a phone, that it's very possible that you'll be watching this on your own sort of personal phone, right? So hopefully, and so I have to sort of indulge that hypocrisy, that tension, whatnot, right, in the hope of resisting it, because I want to resist this tendency. I think this tendency is dehumanizing. It's demeaning. And we can do better. We can do better. We can enter back into relationships with each other. That's what I hope can happen in the world at large, right? And why I find so much of digital media just so off-putting. All right, well, there you have it for the moment, section 3 of this fantastic little work by Gunther Anders. And hopefully you've been stimulated, and I'll let you guys go for now. I'll catch you on the flip. Alrighty, ciao.